13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what may happen to her.
I just want to say that my heart goes out to Karmelo Anthony's family. And I mean that seriously. It really does. I feel terrible for this woman's 13-year-old daughter. Because I would be afraid too if there was a murderer in the next room. I would be afraid too if there was a murderer sleeping under the same roof as me. So I don't blame her daughter for being scared. And you want to know what the harsh reality is? This woman can get up there and say her son didn't do nothing all she wants. She can get up there and try to paint her son out to be a victim all she wants. But the sad reality is she will never be able to look in her baby boy's face again without thinking about the fact that he plunged a knife in another kid's chest. Every time she sees her sweet little child, she's going to see a murderer, a killer, because that's what he is. Every time she sees Karmelo go to give her 13-year-old daughter a hug, going to give his littlest sister a hug, she's going to be thinking about how he plunged that knife in Austin's chest. Every move this kid makes for the remainder of his life, there's always going to be the thought in the back of everyone's mind that he's a killer. And his family can cry and complain and play victim all they want to. They're not going to be able to escape that reality. But I feel like there's been so much attention put on Karmelo and Karmelo's family. So for a moment, I want to talk about Austin Metcalf's dad. Now, the way I cover these true crime cases, I try to keep the victims' families out of my coverage as much as possible. Don't get me wrong, if they do interviews and they make statements, I will play those statements on my channel. But I do not go out of my way to reach out to these people. I don't harass these people. I don't try to get these people to come on my YouTube channel so I can get more views. I do whatever I can when possible to kind of just keep the victims' families, in every case, out of all of the drama that surrounds these cases so often. Because you see, I understand that Austin Metcalf's family, they should be able to grieve and go through this process of losing their son without having to fight this fight, without having to be part of this battle that is going on surrounding this case. They're already fighting the hardest battle that they will ever fight in their life, the battle of losing a child. They're already fighting the toughest fight that anyone could fight. So they shouldn't have to be spending their time fighting against all of these evil, racist people who are spreading hate and lies about their son all across the country and online. They shouldn't have to take up that fight. They should be spending this time right now coming together as a family, honoring Austin Metcalf's legacy, and just going through the grieving process, right? They shouldn't have to fight this fight that's going on, which is why I am willing to step up to the plate and fight this fight for them. And that's why you guys should be willing to fight this fight for them. They shouldn't have to be out here trying to clear their son's name. They shouldn't have to be out here trying to clear up misinformation or any of that. We can do that for them, which is why I've been doing that for them for the past couple of weeks. For like the past 2 weeks, my entire life has basically been dedicated to clearing the lies, the hateful lies that have been spread about Austin Metcalf. The last 2 weeks of my life have been dedicated to clearing up all of these hateful rumors while confronting the people who are spreading them. because this fight isn't a fight that Austin Metcalf's family should have to worry about right now. This shouldn't be a fight at all. In fact, from day one, everyone should have looked at this case and said, hey, this is wrong. And we all could have moved on. Austin Metcalf's family couldn't have moved on, but we wouldn't have to be here having these arguments, these debates, these conversations. The only reason why we're still here talking about this right now is because there's an entire community of people who are defending Karmelo, who are cheering on Austin's death. That's why this case is getting more attention than other cases where there's not an entire community of people coming together to celebrate the killer and to bash the victims. But in this case, the killer is being celebrated and the victim is being bashed, which is why there's more attention and drama surrounding this case than a lot of other cases and a lot of other news stories going on right now. It shouldn't be hard for people to figure that out. But it's damn near impossible for a lot of Karmelo supporters to understand that. Now, as far as Austin Metcalf's father goes, as you guys know, the other day he made a surprise appearance at the Karmelo Anthony press conference. And since then, there's been a little debate online with people, coming to their own conclusions, forming their own opinions, and really just people trying to figure out what his actual motive was for showing up to the press conference. Did he show up there to stand with his son? To look Karmelo's family in their eyes as they sat up there and had the nerve to play victim? Did he show up to have just so his presence was known? Just so that Karmelo's family knew that as they played victim, his father was right here, standing for his child? Did he show up for that reason? Or did he show up to try to stand and unite with Karmelo's family? Did he show up to sympathize with Karmelo's family as they lied and pretended to be the victims? A lot of people seem to think that that is the case, and I think that might be the case as well, because he made some comments early on, basically right after his son got killed, some comments that I don't agree with, comments sympathizing with his son's murderer and his son's, sympathizing with his son's murderer and his son's murderer's family, right? He made all of these sympathetic comments about Karmelo Anthony and about, hey, don't make this story about this, don't make the story about that. And I don't agree with these comments, but at the same time, I'm in no position to judge. I'm not going to judge a man that just lost his kid. I can't tell him how to react, but I know I wouldn't react in that way. And I know that by reacting this way, you're enabling this community to take more innocent lives. You're enabling this violent community to attack and kill young white kids. At some point, some parent is going to have to take a stand. We can't keep burying white kids because of violent black criminals and illegal immigrants. Someone's going to have to take a stand at some point, right? So I saw a lot of these initial comments that Austin's father made, and I haven't really talked about it, and I'm still not going to get in depth about it, but just know I don't really agree with a lot of what he said. But here's one thing I do know. Regardless of what Austin's father's motive was, when he showed up to that press conference, regardless of what his intentions were, he did something epic. He did something absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not even sure if he realizes it. I don't even think a lot of other people realize it. Without saying a word, without committing any act of violence, without causing a ruckus and a major, disruption, Austin Metcalf's dad popped up at that press conference and he destroyed Karmelo Anthony's entire defense. He destroyed the entire narrative, the entire pro-Karmelo Anthony narrative that has been spun by racists online. He destroyed the whole entire defense. Because you got to remember what the story is here, right? Karmelo Anthony went under another team's tent where he had no business being. People asked him multiple times to leave, and he refused, and then eventually stabbed a kid in the chest and killed him, right? But the argument online has been, oh, well, it's not the 1930s anymore. You can't tell black people where to sit. What is this, Rosa Parks? They've been literally comparing Karmelo Anthony to Rosa Parks for the last week and a half. They've been talking about, hey, you can't make this rule where, this kid can't be allowed here. White people can't dictate where black kids are allowed to sit and what they're allowed to do. Rules are racist. Rules are white supremacy. That's been the whole narrative that's been spinning. That no one on planet Earth has the right to tell someone to leave, right? When they're in an area or in a place where they're uninvited, unwelcomed, or where they're just simply not supposed to be. So this entire time, ever since this story broke, Karmelo Anthony's supporters have been pretending to not understand the concept of maybe being somewhere where you're not supposed to be. They pretend that they don't understand the concept of someone asking someone to leave from an area where they're not supposed to be, to leave from an area where they're not welcome, to leave from an area that is designated for another group of people or designated for a different reason. Karmelo's supporters act like they cannot understand this concept, yet at the press conference, they put on full display that they understand this concept very well. Because you see, they made the argument that Austin Metcalf's father needed to leave the press conference because he showed up to a place that they argued he shouldn't be, right? He showed up to an event that they argued he had no business being at, right? Just like Karmelo showed up under that tent where he had no business being at. They've made the argument that by Austin Metcalf's father showing up to this press conference, that he is antagonizing them, right? That he is almost provoking them. Which the same could be said about Karmelo Anthony when he went under Austin Metcalf's tent. I mean, the situations are strikingly similar, right? It's almost like Austin Metcalf's dad went to another team's area, right? Because you got the Austin Metcalf team and you got the Karmelo Anthony team. Right now, the Karmelo Anthony team is having their press conference and they don't want the Austin Metcalf team here, okay? But he showed up. And immediately, all of these concepts that they act like they don't understand, immediately they understand these concepts and they want Austin Metcalf's father removed. And what does Austin Metcalf's father do? Austin Metcalf's father puts on full display for the world to see that you can simply leave when someone asks you to leave. You don't have to pull out a knife and stab someone in the chest when someone tells you or asks you to leave from somewhere where they don't want you to be, somewhere where you're not designated to be. So I don't know if Austin Metcalf's father realizes this. I damn sure don't think Karmelo's team realizes this. I don't think the general audience, many of them realize this. How ironic this is that Austin Metcalf's father, maybe even unknowingly, just destroyed their entire argument that has been in support of Karmelo Anthony. Austin Metcalf's father had no business showing up to this press conference. Okay, well, Karmelo Anthony had no business showing up under Austin Metcalf's team's tent. This press conference was for Karmelo Anthony's family. Well, Austin team's tent was for Austin's team, and Karmelo was not part of that team. Austin's father showed up to this press conference to antagonize us. Well, Karmelo Anthony showed up under Austin's team's tent to antagonize Austin and his team. Karmelo Anthony had to stab someone in the chest after they asked him to leave. It was the right thing to do. It was his only option. Well, you asked Austin Metcalf's dad to leave, and I didn't see him take a knife out of a backpack. He literally left and shook some people's hands and left peacefully, showing the world that your son could have done the same thing, but he didn't. So, just like that, without even putting in any effort, the whole argument, the whole narrative that is being spun in defense of Karmelo Anthony has been destroyed in epic fashion. And like I said, it was effortlessly. It's almost hilarious. It's almost too good to be true watching it play out in the way that it did. But they discussed this a little bit on the news, and I want to play this clip for you guys real quickly. But before I do that, people often ask, how can they support the channel? The answer to that question is very simple. You can support the channel by liking the video, sharing the video, dropping a comment below, becoming part of the conversation. But if you want to take your support one step further, you can always support by sending a Cash App or a Super Thanks. Always greatly appreciated. But with that being said, let's roll this news clip, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Brandon, thanks for being with us here today. You've been following this story closely. It only seems to get more wild and, quite honestly, more abhorrent by the day.
Yeah, Will, thank you for having me on. And it is very despicable what we've seen so far. And it just speaks to the underlying underbelly of racism that still exists in this country, perpetuated by black people, in my personal opinion. I made a statement on one of my videos to tell Metcalf's father, quit capitulating to these black people because they do not want to be your friend. A lot of them who are associated with this incident, that's giving money in the GoFundMe, who's representing the family, they secretly despise and hate white people and want revenge for what they believe is still a wrong way back in slavery. So it is turning south as the capitulation continues. But another thing that I find is going to be very problematic is that you have people that are pushing disinformation that makes it appear that this is a self-defense claim. And I do not think that this kid has a chance at self-defense, which is going to be horrible for him at the end of the day.
That does seem to be what the claim will be made when it gets to the court. But in the public opinion or in the public sphere, Brandon, you're right. We're already seeing comparisons made. In fact, Dominic Alexander did it yesterday at that press conference. He made comparisons to, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, that has to be the most asinine thing that you can even try to express. Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked. He was chased down, cornered. A guy tried to take his weapon. He shot him. Another person tried to use a deadly weapon against him, which was a skateboard at the time. He ended up shooting him, and another person pulled a gun on him. And what else could he have done but protect himself lawfully in a place that he belonged? This is a very different situation. You have a young man who brought a knife to a track meet, which is already illegal, bringing a knife on the premise of a sporting event. And then you have the person, obviously, with the evidence that we have so far, is premeditating a stabbing because he has his hand in the bag and he's telling them, touch me and see what happens. You only need a split second to develop premeditation. So if you have a plan that you're going to use a weapon against somebody, before you use the weapon, that's premeditation. And not utilizing equal force against a person is another uphill battle for him. Someone pushing you does not necessitate you to use deadly force against them. In no world is that legal, especially not in the state of Texas.
Let me ask you a question, in your opinion, Brandon, of Dominique Alexander. That press conference, I think we both agree, was absolutely appalling. He managed to butcher not just regular English grammar, but he managed to butcher the facts, for example, of Kyle Rittenhouse case. How does someone with not just his inabilities, but his criminal record become a voice in the public eye for someone like the family of Karmelo Anthony?
Will, this is just a continuation of the manipulation from black leaders to just pimp out these families for money. This man is not qualified whatsoever, and I can put my life on it that the defense team is literally want to throw up thinking about this guy litigating or putting information out in the public, and he's an idiot. He can't even say defense. What did he say? Self-defense. The other day he said self-defense. He don't even know how to say self-defense. And then also, I think what his objective is, and people may be missing this, is that they want to get the public to be on their side in order to taint the jury pool. Because as much disinformation they can put out there, as much sympathy they can garnish from the surrounding public, when it's time to do jury selections, they're going to have a lot of people that have sympathy towards Karmelo Anthony, which could create a hung jury situation. But this gentleman who has a criminal record is not a fair and good representation for this family. I actually feel sorry for that little boy. Well, not that the fact that he killed somebody, but that they're thrusting him into a position that I don't think he wants to take. Karmelo Anthony should take a plea deal, because anybody that's thinking he's going to win in a defense claim in court is in for a rude awakening. And it's just very sad, this whole thing. One kid is dead.
It's very sad.
Another kid is going to probably spend his rest of his life in prison. And then you have these people pimping the family out to make as much money as they can and leave them high and dry at the end of the day.
And if the cost be racial division in this country, then so be it. That's the cost to pay for these actors, these grifters. Brandon Tatum, thank you so much for...
I agree with what Tatum is saying here, and he made a couple of points that I've been making for a few days now as well. And I'm glad that there are other people out there that kind of share in the frustration when it comes to Austin Metcalf's father, because I don't want to judge him for being forgiving. I don't want to judge him for not wanting or allowing hatred to consume him, to consume his heart, because it easily can in a moment like this. But at the same time, I think Austin's father needs to realize who he's dealing with. He's dealing with the murderers of his son. And I say murderers for a reason, because at this point, I do think that Karmelo's family, I do think that Karmelo's parents are at least partially to blame for what he did. And the reason I feel that way is because of the lack of accountability that they've been showing in these press conferences. So you got to know who you're dealing with. These people do not want to be friends. They do not want to extend an olive branch. They don't want to shake your hand. No, they want to sell t-shirts and profit off of your son's murder. They are literally labeling their son, Karmelo, as a hero, and they are propping him up as a civil rights icon. Okay? They literally refer to Karmelo Anthony as a hero on the websites where they're selling his shirts and raising money. But another point that I've been trying to make, and a point that Tatum made in that news clip, is that these people surrounding Karmelo, this network, this Dominique baby beating guy, these people are making things so much worse for Karmelo. Everything that has transpired is a terrible look to anyone that's not in the ghetto portions of the black community, right? If you're not in the most vile, racist, and ignorant portions or parts of the black community, then you could see this story for what it is, and you realize that everything that has played out is absolutely disgusting. And a lot of it you can't blame necessarily on Karmelo or his parents, because it's these activists, it's this activist network that is now representing Karmelo's parents And they have inserted themselves in this situation. And all they care about is profiting and gaining from this situation. They don't care about Karmelo. And they may be setting Karmelo up for failure. Because usually, when you don't take a plea deal and you drag a case like this out, you get a harsher sentence. Karmelo's best bet would be to take some type of deal if he gets one. Because you're guilty. You admitted you're guilty. And the self-defense just doesn't really hold up here from anything that I've seen. Now, are there details out there that may change that? I highly doubt it. Because at the end of the day, he brought a knife to a school track meet. So I think that nullifies a lot of the other arguments that people can make in this case. But this network, this Dominique baby beater dude, they're going to lead Karmelo Anthony right into the flames. They're going to lead him right into the fire, and they're going to leave him in there to burn as they run away with money, clout, and attention, because that's what this is all about. There will be another Karmelo in a couple of months or a couple of years that they'll exploit again. And they won't care that he's sitting in jail for however long, longer than he maybe would have if he would have taken a plea deal. So as disgusting as all of this stuff is, I'm going to say it again. I've already said it 5 times. I'm glad this stuff is playing out. Just enjoy the show. Because as of right now, there has not been anything that Karmelo's family or their representatives have done. There hasn't been a single thing that they've done that's been a good look, that's been something that is constructive that will help Karmelo's case. They are hurting his case. They are hurting Karmelo. And I don't really care. I don't really feel bad, but I can see that it's happening. It's a shame that they can't. But for now, you guys let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.